I am 26 and female. My story begins on what was supposed to be the most romantic day of the year. Instead, I found myself staring at a sterile white ceiling, the rhythmic beep of a machine beside me the only company I had. It was Valentine's Day, and I was in the hospital. A sudden, sharp pain in my side had sent me here, a pain that turned out to be a ruptured ovarian cyst. It was scary and agonizing, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the ache of being alone. My husband, Mark, was not there. He was, according to a hurried text message, stuck in a critical work emergency that he just could not get out of. So sorry, babe. Huge server crash. We'll be there as soon as I can. Love you, the message read. I wanted to believe him. For the first few hours, I did. I clutched my phone, rereading his words, telling myself that his job was demanding. He was a good provider. He worked hard. These were the things I repeated like a mantra to drown out the growing silence in my hospital room. The nurse, a kind woman named Mary, came in to check my vitals. She smiled sympathetically. "Is your husband on his way?" she asked. I forced a smile back. "He's stuck at work. A big emergency." "Oh, the poor man," she said, patting my hand. "He must be worried sick." I nodded, my throat tight. But was he? As the hours ticked by, a cold dread began to seep into my bones. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. I called again an hour later. Voicemail. I sent a text. "Just want to hear your voice." "I'm scared," no reply. The little bubble with the 3 dots that signal someone is typing never appeared. My best friend, Sarah, called me. She was furious on my behalf. A work emergency? On Valentine's Day? While his wife is in the hospital. "Clara, that sounds like the worst excuse I have ever heard," she said. "He's a senior programmer, Sarah. These things happen," I argued, though my voice lacked conviction. "No, they do not," she insisted. "Not like this. A whole team of people deals with a server crash. He could step out for 5 minutes to call you. He could have his boss call you. Something is not right." I knew she was right. Deep down, I felt it. The gnawing unease was worse than the dull throb in my abdomen. I spent the night alone, drifting in and out of a restless sleep, my phone held tightly in my hand, its screen dark and silent. The flowers for my parents arrived the next morning. A card for my sister came with the hospital lunch I could not eat. But from Mark, there was nothing. Not a call, not another text, not a single sign that he was, as the nurse had said, worried sick about me. He finally showed up late the next afternoon, looking tired but not particularly stressed. He brought a wilted bouquet of carnations from the hospital gift shop. He kissed my forehead and sat down in the chair beside my bed. "I am so sorry, honey. It was a complete nightmare. We were up all night," he said. I looked at him, searching his face for any sign of a lie. He looked genuinely exhausted. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Sarah had planted a seed of doubt that was growing out of control. "It is okay," I said quietly. "I was just so scared." "I know. And I feel terrible," he said, taking my hand. His felt warm and strong, and for a moment I let myself believe him. I let the comfort of his presence wash over me, pushing the doubts away. He told me all about the server migration that went wrong, using technical jargon I did not understand, but that sounded plausible enough. He explained how the whole system for their biggest client was down, and it was all hands on deck. He stayed for about an hour before his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. "I have to go. They need me to check on the final patch," he said, standing up. "Already?" I asked, my heart sinking. "I am so sorry, Clara. I promise I will make this up to you. Once this crisis is over, we will have our own Valentine's Day. A weekend away, just the 2 of us," he promised. He kissed me again and was gone, leaving me with the sad-looking carnations and the same cold feeling of dread I had felt all night. Something was wrong. His story was good, but his eyes were distant. He was there, but he was not with me. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my core, that the emergency he was dealing with had nothing to do with work. The line had been crossed. It was not just about missing Valentine's Day. It was about being abandoned when I was at my most vulnerable. I was his wife, and I had needed him. He had chosen not to be there. I decided, right there in that sterile hospital bed, that I was done believing his stories. I needed the truth. I was discharged the next day with instructions to rest for at least a week. Mark was there to pick me up, his demeanor a perfect blend of solicitous and apologetic. He carried my bag, helped me into the car, and fluffed the pillows on the couch for me when we got home. He made me tea and promised to work from home for the rest of the day to take care of me. It was a perfect performance. He was the doting husband, making up for his unavoidable absence. But I could not shake the feeling that I was watching a play. "I really am sorry about everything, Clara," he said, sitting on the edge of the coffee table, facing me. "I hate that you were alone." "I was really scared, Mark," I said, my voice quiet. "I know. And it kills me," he said. "It was just unavoidable." My boss was breathing down my neck. The whole company was in a panic. I just nodded. I did not have the energy to argue or question him further. Not yet. I needed to get my strength back. I needed to be smart about this. For the rest of the day, I let him fuss over me, bringing me soup and blankets, putting on my favorite movies. I played the part of the grateful, recovering wife. But inside, I was a detective, watching his every move, listening to his every word, filing away the inconsistencies. The way his phone was always angled away from me. The way he would quickly switch screens if I walked into the room while he was on his laptop. The way his cheerfulness felt brittle, stretched too thin over a foundation of lies. That night, after he had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed. My body ached with every step, but I was driven by a need that was stronger than the pain. I went to his home office. He had left his work laptop open. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat down in his chair. I did not know what I was looking for, but I knew I had to look. His email was open. I scanned through the messages from the past few days. There was nothing about a server crash. There were a few routine emails, some project updates, but nothing that indicated an all-hands-on-deck emergency that would keep him completely unreachable for 24 hours. My hands started to shake. It was one thing to suspect, another to see the first piece of evidence, however small. I closed the email, and my eyes fell on the social media tab he had left open. It was a picture. A friend of his, someone I barely knew, had tagged him in a photo album. The album was titled Valentine's Bash 2024. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. The first photo was a group shot. A dozen people smiling and laughing, holding red drinks in a festively decorated room. And there, in the middle of the crowd, was Mark. He was not wearing his work clothes. He was in a nice shirt, his arms slung casually around the shoulders of a woman I recognized instantly. Chloe. His work friend, the one he always said was like a sister to him. She was leaning into him, her head tilted towards his, a wide, triumphant smile on her face. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. I clicked through the rest of the photos, each one a dagger in my heart. Mark and Chloe doing shots at the bar. Mark and Chloe dancing, his hands on her waist. Mark and Chloe laughing with a group of friends, all of them looking carefree and celebratory. The timestamp on the photos was from the night I was in the hospital. The night he was supposedly pulling an all-nighter to save his company from a catastrophic server failure. I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I had to grip the sides of the desk. The air was squeezed out of my lungs. It was all there, in bright, cheerful color. The lie was not just a lie, it was a whole other life. A life he was living while I was alone, in pain and terrified. I took my phone out, and with trembling fingers, I took pictures of every single photo. I captured the timestamps, the tags, the comments from friends saying what a cute couple they were. I documented everything. Then I went back to our bedroom. I slipped back under the covers, my body ice cold. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, just as I had in the hospital. But this time, I was not just lonely and scared. I was angry. A deep, quiet, and powerful anger began to smolder inside me. He had not just lied to me. He had disrespected me. He had humiliated me, He had left me to suffer alone while he celebrated with another woman. The performance of the doting husband was over. The play was done. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that he was going to pay for it. I did not know how yet, but I knew that I would not let this go. I would not be the forgiving wife who looked the other way. He had underestimated me. He had mistaken my kindness for weakness. And that was a mistake he would come to regret. The next morning, I woke up with a chilling sense of purpose. The anger from the night before had cooled into a hard, clear resolve. I still felt weak physically, but mentally, I had never been stronger. I had a secret. I had the truth. And now I needed to build my case. Mark was already up, making coffee. He smiled at me when I walked into the kitchen. "Morning, sleepyhead. How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice full of fake concern. "A little better, thank you," I said, my voice even and calm. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. I was an actress now, too. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a log. Finally caught up after that nightmare at work," he said, stretching his arms over his head. I just nodded, taking a sip of water. I watched him move around the kitchen, the casual ease in his movements, making my stomach turn. He had no idea. He thought he was safe. He thought I was the same trusting, naive woman he had married. "I think I am just going to rest on the couch today," I said. "Maybe watch some TV." "Good idea. You take it easy. I will bring you whatever you need," he said, the perfect husband again. While he was in the shower, I made my first move. I took his phone from the nightstand. My heart was pounding, but my fingers were steady as I typed in the passcode. It was our anniversary date. The irony was so bitter, it almost made me laugh. I went straight to his messages with Chloe. Most of them had been deleted. He was sloppy, but not a complete idiot. But he had missed a few. A few from the week before Valentine's Day. "Cannot wait for V-Day weekend," she had written. "Is everything set?" "All set," he had replied. "The hotel is booked. Just have to handle things on my end." "She has no idea?" Chloe asked. "Not a clue," Mark wrote back, followed by a winking emoji. A weekend. A hotel. It was not just a party. It was a planned getaway. He had been planning to cheat on me for our Valentine's weekend while I was supposed to think he was on a business trip he had mentioned a month ago, but that had supposedly been canceled. My surgery had just been an inconvenient interruption to his plans. He had not canceled his trip. He had just adapted his lie. I took pictures of the messages with my own phone. Then I went to his photo gallery. He had deleted the pictures from the party, but he had forgotten to clear his recently deleted folder. There they were. All the pictures from the social media album, and more. Selfies of him and Chloe kissing. A picture of 2 champagne glasses clinking together, with the corner of a hotel bedspread visible in the background. My breath hitched. The betrayal was deeper, colder, and more calculated than I had even imagined. I restored all the photos to his main gallery and then sent them to myself before deleting the messages I had sent. I put the phone back on the nightstand exactly where I had found it, just as the water in the shower turned off. I spent the rest of the day on the couch, my laptop open. I told Mark I was catching up on emails, but I was actually digging. I logged into our joint credit card account. And there it was. A charge from a fancy boutique hotel, 200 miles away. The charge was from Valentine's Day. Underneath it, a charge for a couple's massage. And another from a high-end restaurant in the same town. The total was over $2,000. Money from our joint account. Money I had contributed to. Money we were supposed to be saving for a down payment on a house. He had used our future to fund his affair. The rage that filled me was so pure and so hot, it almost choked me. But I pushed it down. I took screenshots of the credit card statement. I saved them to a secure folder online, along with the photos and the text messages. I was building my arsenal. That evening, I decided to test the waters. I needed to see how he would react to a small, gentle probe. We were eating dinner, the bland chicken soup he had made for me. "You know," I started, swirling my spoon in the broth. "It is funny. My friend Jessica's husband also works in tech. She said they had a huge server issue a few months ago, and the company sent out an email to all the spouses explaining the situation and apologizing for the long hours. They even sent them all a gift basket. Mark froze, a spoonful of soup halfway to his mouth.
Oh,
Really? He said, his voice a little tight. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone light and conversational. I guess your company just does things differently. Yeah, I guess so, he said, quickly looking down at his bowl. We are more of a get-it-done, no-excuses kind of place. They do not really do the whole corporate hand-holding thing. Right, I said. That makes sense. I did not push it. I just planted the seed. I let him sit with a small inconsistency, the tiny crack in his story. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was reevaluating his lie, checking it for weaknesses. I wanted him to feel just a little bit insecure. I wanted him to start wondering if I knew something. The fear would make him sloppy. Later that night, I called Sarah. I told her everything. The pictures, the texts, the hotel charges. She listened in stunned silence. Oh, Clara, she finally breathed. That is monstrous. I am so sorry. Do not be sorry, I said, my voice hard. Be angry with me. I am furious, she said, her voice rising. What are you going to do? Are you leaving him? Leaving him is the last step, I said. First, I am going to make him pay. He did not just cheat on me, Sarah. He abandoned me. He stole from me. He let me lie in a hospital bed thinking I was loved, while he was laughing and dancing with someone else. I am not just going to walk away and let him get away with that. What do you have in mind? She asked, a note of caution in her voice. I do not know yet, I admitted. But I have the evidence. I have all the proof I need. Now I just need a plan. He thinks I am weak. He thinks I am fragile. He is about to find out how wrong he is. Talking to Sarah solidified my resolve. Hearing the story out loud, detailing each piece of evidence, made it all the more real and all the more unforgivable. I was no longer just a victim. I was an investigator, a prosecutor, and soon I would be the judge. Mark had created this situation. He had built a house of cards on a foundation of lies. And I was going to be the one to pull the single card that would make it all come crashing down around him. I just had to decide which card to pull first. The next few days were a masterclass in deception on both our parts. I continued to play the role of the convalescing wife, allowing him to wait on me while I secretly planned his demise. He, in turn, played the doting husband, all the while covering his tracks with an almost comical lack of skill. He started being overly affectionate, buying me small gifts, constantly telling me how much he loved me and how terrible he felt. It was a transparent attempt to soothe the guilt I was not even supposed to know he had. He also started asking subtle questions, trying to figure out if my mood had shifted. You seem quiet today. Is the pain bad? He would ask. Just tired, I would reply with a weak smile. The doctor said it would take a while to get my energy back. His relief was palpable. He wanted to believe I was just physically recovering, not emotionally plotting. His arrogance was my greatest weapon. He genuinely believed he was smarter than me. I decided my next step was to understand the full scope of his financial betrayal. The $2,000 for the hotel weekend was bad enough, but I had a sickening feeling that it was just the tip of the iceberg. I needed to know how much money he had been siphoning from our joint accounts. I waited until he went out to run an errand I had conveniently manufactured by claiming I had a craving for a specific type of ice cream from a store across town. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was at my laptop. I spent the next hour going through years of our financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts. It was tedious, but my anger fueled me. And what I found made me sick. It was not just the one weekend. It was a pattern. Small, unexplained cash withdrawals from our joint savings account every few weeks. Hundreds of dollars at a time. Charges at restaurants I had never been to. Purchases from online stores that sold expensive jewelry and designer bags, none of which had ever been given to me. It was a slow, steady bleed. Over the past 2 years, He had stolen nearly $30,000 from us. From me. I felt like I could not breathe. This was not a simple affair. This was a long-term, calculated campaign of theft and deception. He had been funding a whole other relationship, a whole other life, with my money. The money I worked hard for. The money I had been carefully saving for our future, for the house we were supposed to buy, for the family we were supposed to start. The betrayal was so profound, it almost broke me. For a moment, the anger vanished, replaced by a deep, crushing sorrow. The man I had married did not exist. He was a fiction. The life I thought I had was a lie. I put my head in my hands and let out a single, ragged sob. But I did not allow myself to cry for long. The sorrow quickly hardened back into rage. This was not the time for tears. This was the time for action. I meticulously documented every suspicious transaction. I created a spreadsheet, highlighting each withdrawal, each purchase, linking them to dates when he had claimed to be working late or out with friends. The pattern was undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. When Mark came back, I had composed myself. I was sitting on the couch, watching a movie, the empty ice cream container on the table beside me. "Mission accomplished," he said cheerfully, dropping his keys on the counter. "You are my hero," I said, my voice dripping with an irony that was completely lost on him. That evening, I escalated my psychological campaign. I knew his mother, Brenda, was his greatest enabler and his Achilles heel. She doted on him, believed he could do no wrong, and was the one person whose opinion he truly cared about. I decided it was time to bring her into the game. I called her, putting on my most pathetic, slightly tearful voice. "Brenda? Hi, it is Clara." "Clara, dear. How are you feeling?" Mark told me what happened. "You poor thing," she gushed. "I am recovering," I said softly. It has been hard. Mark has been wonderful, of course, but he has been so stressed with work. That big emergency on Valentine's Day really took a lot out of him." There was a slight pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, yes, that server thing. He told me." "Sounded awful," she said a little too quickly. "It did," I continued, laying the trap. "He felt so terrible for leaving me alone. I just wish I could do something to thank him." I was thinking of getting in touch with his boss, maybe sending a thank you basket to the whole team for all their hard work. "Do you happen to have his boss's name?" "Mark is so modest, he would never tell me." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the panic in her mind. She knew. Of course, she knew. Mark would have told his mommy his cover story to make sure she did not accidentally expose him. "Oh, I do not think that is a good idea, dear," she stammered. "You know how those tech companies are. Very private. They might not appreciate that." "Oh," I said, feigning disappointment. "I just wanted to do something nice." He looked so exhausted when he finally got to the hospital. He must have been working for 36 hours straight. Yes, he was, Brenda said, her voice now firm, resolute in the lie. "He is such a dedicated worker. You are very lucky to have him." "I know," I said, my voice sweet as poison. "I really am." I hung up the phone, a grim smile on my face. She was in on it. She was not just an enabler. She was an active participant in the deception. She would lie for him, protect him, no matter what. This was a darker, more twisted family dynamic than I had ever realized. And I had just put her on notice. She now knew that I was asking questions. She would go straight to Mark, tell him about our conversation. And Mark would start to panic. My prediction was correct. Less than an hour later, Mark came into the living room, his phone in his hand. He was trying to look casual, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "Hey, I just talked to my mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. "She said you called her." "I did," I said, not looking up from my book. "Just letting her know I was feeling a bit better." "She said you were asking about my boss," he said, his voice strained. I finally looked up at him, my expression one of pure innocence. "Oh yeah. I had a silly idea to send a gift basket to your team to thank them for their hard work." She thought it was a bad idea. It is, he said quickly. It is a really bad idea, Clara. It would look weird. Please do not do that. Okay, I said with a small shrug. It was just a thought. You just seemed so stressed out by it all. I wanted to do something nice. I turned back to my book, dismissing him. He stood there for a moment longer, watching me. I could feel his eyes on me, searching for something. But I gave him nothing. I just kept my eyes on the page, my breathing slow and even. He did not know what to do. He could not get angry at me for wanting to do something nice. He could not admit that the reason it was a bad idea was because the entire story was a lie. All he could do was stand there, trapped in the web he himself had woven. Finally, he turned and left the room. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the hall before I allowed myself a small, triumphant smile. The first real crack had appeared in his fortress of lies. And I was the one who had put it there. The game was escalating, and I was discovering that I was a much better player than he had ever imagined. The fear was starting to shift. It was leaving me and it was finding him. And I was going to make sure it grew until it consumed him completely. The next phase of my plan required me to find the one piece of evidence that was undeniable, something that could not be explained away. The photos could be doctored, he might claim. The texts could be misinterpreted. The credit card charges could be blamed on a stolen card, however unlikely that sounded. I needed something that would corner him completely, a piece of leverage so powerful it would leave him with no choice but to confess. I needed a smoking gun. My opportunity came a few days later. Mark announced he had to go into the office for a few hours on a Saturday. He claimed they were still dealing with the fallout from the server crash. It was a lie so lazy I almost laughed. He was getting sloppy, repeating the same excuse because he thought it had worked so well the first time. Of course, honey. You do what you have to do, I said sweetly. I will be fine here. I am feeling much stronger. As soon as he was gone, I began my search. I was not looking for more evidence of the affair. I had plenty of that. I was looking for something he was hiding, something that would reveal his character not just to me but to everyone else. I started in his office, the room where I had first discovered the truth. I went through his desk drawers, his filing cabinet, his closet. I found nothing but old paperwork and office supplies. I was about to give up when I noticed his old college backpack tucked away in the back of his closet. It was dusty, and I doubted he had used it in years. On a whim, I pulled it out. It was heavier than it should have been. I unzipped the main compartment. It was filled with old textbooks. But in the front pocket, I found a small, locked metal box. My heart began to beat faster. This was it. This had to be it. People do not keep old receipts in a locked box. I took it to the kitchen and found our toolbox. It took me 10 minutes of prying and twisting with a screwdriver, but I finally managed to break the cheap lock. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was a stack of papers and a USB drive. I looked at the papers first. They were letters. Letters from his father, who had passed away 5 years ago. I had never met him, but Mark always spoke of him with a kind of revered awe. He had been a successful businessman, a man of principle, as Mark always said. I started to read the letters. They were not the warm, fatherly letters I had expected. They were cold, critical, and demanding. His father wrote about Mark's lack of ambition, his poor choices, his tendency to take the easy way out. In one letter, he berated Mark for borrowing money from him and not paying it back. "You have your mother wrapped around your little finger," he wrote. "She will always bail you out. But the real world does not work that way. A man pays his debts." It was a portrait of a deeply disappointing son. And it was a side of Mark's life he had completely hidden from me. He had painted his father as a hero and himself as the devoted son who lived by his example. It was another lie, another carefully constructed facade. Then I picked up the USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, my hand trembling slightly. A single folder appeared on the screen. It was labeled Brenda. I clicked on it. The folder contained dozens of audio files. I clicked on the first one. It was a recording of a phone call. I heard Mark's voice, and then his mother's. "I need another 5,000, Mark was saying. I maxed out the card Clara does not know about. Mark, this is the third time in 6 months, Brenda sighed. Where is all this money going? It is complicated, Mom, he said, his voice wheedling. It is an investment. It is going to pay off big time, I promise. I just need a little more capital to get it off the ground. And Clara cannot know? She asked.
No.
She would not understand. You know how she is about money. So careful. She would panic, he said, his tone dismissive. Just transfer it to my personal account. I will pay you back as soon as the deal goes through. I clicked on another file and another. It was call after call, all the same. Mark asking for money, Brenda reluctantly agreeing. He had excuses for everything: a stock tip, a business venture, a short-term loan to a friend. They were all lies. He was systematically draining his own mother's retirement savings to fund his lavish lifestyle with Chloe. And he was recording the calls.
Why?
To have leverage over her? To keep track of his lies?
It was sick.
It was predatory.
He was not just a cheater and a thief.
He was a manipulator of the highest order, exploiting the one person who trusted him unconditionally. This was it. This was my smoking gun. This was not just about me anymore. This was about Brenda, too. He was hurting his own mother, lying to her, stealing from her, all while pretending to be the perfect son. I copied the entire contents of the USB drive onto my own secure cloud storage. Then I put the drive and the letters back in the box, closed the lid as best I could, and put the backpack back in the closet, exactly where I had found it. I left no trace. When Mark got home, I was calm. I had the ultimate weapon, and I knew I had to be patient and wait for the perfect moment to use it. The knowledge of what he had done, what he was capable of, settled deep inside me. The last remnants of the man I thought I loved were gone, burned away by the truth. In his place was a stranger, a monster hiding behind a familiar face. I began to think about the confrontation. A private conversation would not be enough. He would deny it. He would try to manipulate me, to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. Brenda would back him up. No, this had to be public. It had to be a performance. He had humiliated me in secret. I would expose him in public. He loved his image, his reputation as the good husband, the devoted son, the successful professional. I was going to shatter that image into a million pieces. I decided on the venue: Sunday dinner at Brenda's house. It was a weekly tradition. His sister, Laura, and her husband would be there. They were decent people, a bit distant, but generally fair. They would be my audience. I spent the next few days preparing. I created a short audio clip, a greatest hits, of Mark's manipulations. It started with him asking for money, followed by Brenda's worried questions, and ended with his empty promises to pay her back. I made sure to include the part where he called me uptight and controlling about money. I loaded the file onto my phone, ready to be played. The drive to Brenda's house that Sunday was tense. Mark was in a strangely good mood, humming along to the radio. He had no idea he was driving towards his own execution. "You are in a good mood today," I commented. "Just a beautiful day," he said, smiling at me. "And I am glad you are feeling well enough to come to dinner. Mom has been so worried." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I just nodded and looked out the window, gathering my strength. I felt a strange sense of calm. I was not nervous. I was ready. We arrived at Brenda's house. She greeted us at the door with a big hug for Mark and a slightly more reserved one for me. Laura and her husband, Tom, were already there, sitting in the living room. Dinner was, as always, a performance of happy family life. Brenda talked about her garden. Laura talked about her kids. Mark told a funny story from work, a complete fabrication, I was sure. I was mostly silent, eating my food, biding my time. I could feel Brenda watching me, a slight nervousness in her eyes. She remembered our phone call. She knew something was off. After dinner, as we were all sitting in the living room with coffee, I decided it was time. I cleared my throat, and the room fell silent. "Actually," I began, my voice clear and steady, "there is something I would like to talk about." Mark looked at me, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. I was interrupting his post-dinner relaxation. "What is it, honey?" he asked. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past week, while I was recovering," I said, looking around the room, making eye contact with everyone. "About honesty. And about family." Brenda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Mark's smile became fixed. "Mark," I said, turning to him directly, "I want you to tell me where you were on Valentine's Day." The color drained from his face. The question was so direct, so out of the blue, it completely blindsided him. This is it, I think. This is the moment everything changes. He stares at me, his mouth slightly open. He looks like a fish pulled from the water, gasping for air. "What are you talking about, Clara?" "I was at work. We have been over this." His voice is a little too loud, a little too defensive. "No, we have not been over this," I say, my voice remaining calm and level. "You gave me a story. I want the truth now. Where were you?" "I was at work," he insists, turning to his mother for support. "Mom, tell her. I told you all about the server crash." Brenda immediately jumps to his defense, just as I knew she would. "He was, Clara. He called me from the office. He was exhausted, the poor thing." "You are not being fair, bringing this up now." She tries to sound compassionate, but there is a sharp, protective edge to her voice. "I see," I say, nodding slowly. "So, you were both at the office all night, Mark? Working tirelessly to fix a problem?"
Yes.
"For God's sake, what is this interrogation?" he snaps, his composure starting to crack. I reach into my purse and pull out my phone. I do not say a word. I just unlock it and turn the screen towards him. It is the first picture from the social media album. Him, with his arm around Chloe, both of them beaming at the Valentine's bash. Mark's face goes completely white.
He cannot speak.
He just stares at the phone, his eyes wide with panic. Laura and Tom, sitting on the other couch, lean forward, trying to see the screen. "What is that?" Laura asks. I turn the phone so they can see. Tom lets out a low whistle. Laura's eyes widen, and she looks from the picture to her brother, her expression a mixture of shock and disgust. Brenda stands up. "What is the meaning of this? That could be an old picture. People doctor photos all the time," she says, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. "It is not an old picture, Brenda," I say calmly. "It was posted on Valentine's Day. There are about 50 more if you would like to see them. There are pictures of them dancing. There are pictures of them doing shots. There is even a lovely one of them kissing." Mark finds his voice. "Clara, do not do this here," he hisses, his eyes darting towards his sister and her husband. His humiliation is beginning, and it is beautiful to watch. "Do what, Mark?" I ask, my voice still even. "Tell the truth? I thought that is what families did. Or is that only for things that make you look good?" He stands up and tries to take the phone from me. "Give me that." I pull it back. "No," I say firmly. "I am not done. Because it was not just a party, was it, Mark? It was a whole weekend. A weekend at a very expensive hotel. A weekend that you paid for with money from our joint savings account. The money we were saving for a house." I turned to Brenda. "He abandoned me in the hospital, Brenda. While I was alone and scared after surgery, your son was getting a couple's massage with another woman, using my money." Brenda looks horrified, but she still tries to defend him. "There must be an explanation. Mark would never." "Oh, he would," I interrupt. "And he is very good at explanations. But the credit card statements are a little harder to explain away. $2,342 to be exact." Laura gasps. "Mark, is this true?" she asks, her voice sharp. Mark does not even look at her. His eyes are locked on me, filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. "You went through my things? You spied on me?" "I looked for the truth, because I knew you would never give it to me," I retort. "And I found it. I found all of it. I found the $30,000 you have stolen from our accounts over the past 2 years to fund your other life." This new revelation hits the room like a bomb. Tom shakes his head in disbelief. Laura looks like she's going to be sick. Brenda sinks back into her chair, her face pale.
Tires-tu tous en dollars?
That cannot be right. Oh, but it is, I say. I have the spreadsheets to prove it. Every last penny. But that is not even the worst part. Is it, Mark? He just glares at me, silent. He knows what is coming. He knows I have him completely cornered. You see, I say, addressing the whole room now. Mark does not just steal from his wife. He steals from his mother, too. Brenda looks at me, bewildered. What are you talking about? Mark would never steal from me. Would not he? I ask gently. Brenda, how many investments have you helped him with over the past few years? How many times has he come to you, asking for a few $1,000s, promising to pay you back as soon as his big deal comes through? Brenda's face crumples. The truth is dawning on her, and it is devastating. Those were loans, she whispers. He is my son. They were not loans, Brenda. They were theft, I say. And he was so proud of how he was manipulating you that he recorded your phone calls. This is the final blow. I see the last bit of fight go out of Mark. He slumps onto the arm of the couch, his head in his hands. You are lying, Brenda chokes out, tears starting to stream down her face. You are a vindictive, horrible liar. Am I? I ask. I hold up my phone again. I could play the recordings right now if you would like. I have a particularly good one where he explains to you that he needs money because he maxed out a secret credit card and that he cannot tell me because I am too uptight about money. Would you like to hear it? Or should we start with one of the dozen other calls where he begs you for your retirement savings? Silence. The only sound in the room is Brenda's ragged sobs. Laura gets up and goes to her mother, putting an arm around her shoulders, but her eyes are fixed on Mark with a look of pure contempt. Get out, Laura says, her voice shaking with rage. Get out of my mother's house, Mark. Mark does not move. He just sits there, defeated. You hurt her, Tom says, standing up. His voice is low and dangerous. Get out.
Now.
Slowly, Mark gets to his feet. He does not look at any of us. He walks towards the door, his shoulders slumped. He looks small. He looks pathetic. As he reaches the door, I say one last thing. The divorce papers will be sent to your office on Monday, Mark. And I will be seeing you in court. I want every single penny you stole from me, and from your mother. I have all the evidence I need. He stops, his hand on the doorknob, but he does not turn around. He just opens the door and walks out into the night, closing it softly behind him. The moment he is gone, the tension in the room breaks. Brenda collapses into full-blown hysterics. Laura tries to comfort her, all the while shooting me glances that are a strange mix of gratitude and horror. Tom just stands there, shaking his head. I do not stay long. This is their family drama to sort out. My part is done. I quietly gather my purse and my coat. Clara, wait, Laura says as I head for the door. I turn. Thank you, she says, her voice barely a whisper. I had no idea. We had no idea. He is a very good liar, I say simply. But lies have a way of catching up to you. I let myself out of the house and walk to my car. As I drive away, I do not feel triumphant. I do not feel happy. I just feel empty. The anger that has been fueling me for the past week is gone, and in its place is a vast, quiet stillness. It is the stillness of a battlefield after the fight is over. The fallout was immediate and brutal, exactly as I had intended. The family dinner was a detonation, and the shrapnel hit everyone. Laura called me the next day. Her voice was strained, exhausted. He is destroyed, she said, without preamble. Mom is a wreck. She finally admitted to me how much money she has given him. It is over $100,000, Clara. Her entire nest egg. I closed my eyes. The number was even higher than I had imagined. I am so sorry, Laura. Do not be sorry, she said quickly. You did what you had to do. You opened our eyes. We have been enabling him his whole life, my mom most of all. We just never thought he was capable of this level of cruelty. There was a pause. She kicked him out. What? I was surprised. I had expected Brenda to eventually forgive him, to fall back into her old patterns. He showed up at her house last night, begging, Laura explained. She told him he was not her son anymore and slammed the door in his face. Tom and I are staying with her for a few days. She is heartbroken, but she is also furious. The recordings. Hearing him talk about her like that about you. It broke something in her. That was a small victory, I supposed. Breaking the cycle of enabling was the only way Brenda would ever be safe from him. What about Mark? I asked. He is staying at some cheap motel, apparently. He called me, screaming, saying you had ruined his life. I told him he had ruined his own life and his family's, and that he should not contact us again until he gets serious help and pays back every cent he stole from Mom. Then I blocked his number, she finished. Good, I said.
It was more than I had expected from them.
A few days later, my lawyer served Mark with the divorce papers at his office. The petition included a detailed accounting of the $30,000 he had taken from our joint accounts, along with a formal request for full repayment as part of the settlement. The news spread through his workplace like wildfire. His carefully crafted image as a successful, stable family man was shattered. I heard from a former colleague of his that Chloe had dumped him almost immediately. Apparently, she had no interest in being with a man who was broke, disgraced, and embroiled in a messy divorce. She had been attracted to the image he sold her. The successful provider, the generous boyfriend. Once that was gone, so was she. The irony was delicious. He had thrown away his marriage for a woman who was just as superficial and transactional as he was. Mark tried to fight back, of course. His first move was to hire a lawyer who sent back a ridiculous counteroffer, denying all the financial claims and accusing me of erratic and invasive behavior. My lawyer simply laughed. He has no case, she told me over the phone. We have him dead to rights. The bank statements do not lie. The photos do not lie. Does he really want to drag his mother into court to testify about the money he took from her? That was his weak spot. His public humiliation was one thing, but the idea of his mother testifying against him under oath was another. He could not risk it. After a few more weeks of blustering and threats, he folded completely. He agreed to all of my terms. He would repay the $30,000 in installments over the next 2 years. He would sign over his half of the equity in our apartment to me. He would not contest the divorce on any grounds. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a profound sense of relief. It was like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I met Sarah for a celebratory dinner that night. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To the truth, I said, clinking my glass against hers. I am so proud of you, she said, her eyes shining. You were so strong. You did not just crumble. You fought back. I had to, I said. He took more than just money from me. He took my sense of security. He took my trust. I had to take something back. My power. My self-respect. The weeks turned into months. I slowly began to rebuild my life. I redecorated the apartment, erasing every trace of him. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I focused on my work and got a promotion. I started to feel like myself again, the person I was before he had started to subtly chip away at my confidence and independence. I had occasional, indirect updates on Mark's life through Laura, with whom I had developed a tentative friendship. He had lost his job. His performance had plummeted after the scandal, and his company let him go. He was working some low-level IT job, living in a tiny apartment on the bad side of town. He was making his payments to me and to his mother, but just barely. He was isolated and alone. His friends from the party, the ones who had toasted his new relationship, had all abandoned him once his money and status were gone. About a year after the divorce, I was in a grocery store when I saw Brenda. She looked older, more fragile, but there was a new hardness in her eyes. She saw me at the same time. For a moment, we just stared at each other across a display of apples. I expected her to turn away, but she walked towards me. Clara, she said, her voice quiet. Brenda, I replied, my tone neutral. I wanted to thank you, she said, and I was so surprised I almost dropped my basket. I know that sounds strange.
But you saved me.
It was a horrible, painful lesson, but I needed to learn it. I was loving my son to death, letting him destroy himself and everyone around him. I am sorry for the pain it caused you, I said honestly. She shook her head. The pain was already there. You just brought it into the light. He is. He is in therapy now. And he is paying me back. A little bit each month. It will take him the rest of his life, but he is doing it. Maybe one day, he will be a man his father would have been proud of. Or maybe not. But it is his choice now. I am done making excuses for him. We stood in silence for another moment. I hope you are happy, Clara, she said finally. You deserve to be. I am, I said, and I was surprised to realize it was the absolute truth. I really am. She nodded, gave me a small, sad smile, and walked away. Seeing her, hearing that she had finally found her strength, felt like the final piece of closure I did not even know I needed. Her validation meant that I had not just acted out of revenge, but that I had genuinely brought about a necessary, albeit painful, change. Life went on. I sold the apartment and used the money, along with the funds Mark was repaying me, to put a down payment on a small house of my own, the one we were supposed to have bought together. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room and felt a sense of peace I had not felt in years. This was mine. I had built this. Not with a man who lied and stole, but with my own strength, my own resilience. I never saw Mark again. The last I heard, he had moved to another state, trying to start over. I sometimes wondered if he ever truly understood the depth of his betrayal, the cruelty of leaving his wife alone in a hospital bed while he partied with someone else. I wondered if he felt any real remorse, or just the sting of getting caught. But then I would stop myself. It did not matter. His thoughts, his feelings, his life, they were no longer my concern. He had become a ghost, a footnote in a chapter of my life that was now closed. My story began in a hospital, feeling abandoned and small. But it did not end there. I had walked through the fire of betrayal and emerged stronger, smarter, and more fiercely protective of my own happiness. He had tried to break me, but he had only succeeded in showing me how unbreakable I truly was. He had wanted me to feel alone. And in the end, he was the one who learned what true loneliness felt like. He had lost his wife, his family, his job, and his self-respect. I had lost a liar and a thief, and in return, I had found myself. And that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. The final, lingering thought I had about him was not one of anger or sadness, but a quiet, satisfying certainty. He finally learned what it feels like to be small. And I had finally learned how to stand tall, all on my own.